What if I told you that the brain you have today doesn't have to be the brain you have tomorrow? That you, right now, have the power to fundamentally change its very structure and function? Well, today, we're diving into the incredible science that makes all of that possible.
For the longest time, the prevailing wisdom in science was, frankly, a bit of a downer. The idea was that by the time you hit adulthood, your brain was basically set in stone. The pathways were carved, the neurons you had were all you were ever going to get. If you weren't naturally smart, or creative, or disciplined, well, tough luck. That was just how you were wired.
But then a revolutionary discovery came along and completely shattered that old myth. It changed everything we thought we knew about our potential for growth. That old wisdom? Yeah, it was wrong. Completely and wonderfully wrong.
So what replaced that old, rigid idea? Well, we now know our brain has this kind of hidden superpower, a dynamic, incredible ability to constantly change, learn, and rebuild itself. And this ability has a name: neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity isn't about growing a whole new brain or anything like that. It's all about the connections, the synapses, between your existing neurons. They are constantly being strengthened, weakened, or rerouted based on your experiences, your environment, and most importantly, your focused effort.
Here's a really powerful way to picture it. Imagine your brain is this vast, dense forest. Every single time you think a thought or practice a skill, you are forging a trail. The first time, it's tough going. You're hacking through the undergrowth. But the more you use that same trail, the wider and clearer it becomes, while the trails you decide to ignore slowly get overgrown and eventually disappear.
Okay, so this whole process works in two main ways. First, you've got structural plasticity. This is a physical change. When you learn something complex, like a new language or how to juggle, your brain is literally growing new connections. Then there's functional plasticity, and this is where it gets really wild. This is an organizational change. It's how, for example, a blind person's brain can actually repurpose its visual cortex to develop incredibly sensitive hearing. It's amazing. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Neuroplasticity is a neutral process. It doesn't care if the habit you're building is good for you or bad for you. It just works. Which brings us to the dark side of this amazing ability, the plasticity trap.
So, we've been talking about carving all these new, positive trails in the forest of our minds. But what happens if the trail you walk every single day, maybe without even thinking about it, is leading you somewhere you really don't want to go?
This is exactly how negative behaviors get so deeply stuck. Every time you give in to chronic worry, you strengthen the worry circuit, making anxiety your brain's default path. That little voice in your head that's always putting you down, well, you're paving a superhighway for self-criticism. And every time you procrastinate, you're just reinforcing the path to instant gratification over and over again.
Look, the crucial takeaway here is that nothing is neutral. Your brain is constantly being shaped by what you pay attention to. The thoughts and actions you repeat aren't just fleeting, they are the literal building blocks for the person you are becoming.
Now that might sound a little intimidating, but it's actually the most empowering news you could possibly get. Because if you can build negative pathways, you can absolutely build new, positive ones. So let's think of this next part as the user manual for your brain.
Science has given us a really clear roadmap with 5 key principles. First up, focused attention. You have to signal to your brain what's important enough to change. Second is novelty and complexity. Your brain absolutely thrives on new challenges. Third, sleep. This one's non-negotiable. It's when the brain actually solidifies all that new wiring. Fourth is physical movement, which floods the brain with chemicals that help new neurons grow. And fifth is emotional intensity. A strong feeling connected to what you're learning just cements it in your memory.
All 5 of those are critical, but let's just zero in on that first one, because it is truly the master key. You've probably heard this phrase before: neurons that fire together, wire together. It's famous in neuroscience for a reason. To create a strong new pathway, you've got to get the right neurons firing at the same time, without distraction. Intense focus is the signal that tells your brain, pay attention, this is important, wire this circuit.
When you really understand these principles, you realize that neuroplasticity is about so much more than just learning a new hobby. It's about the profound and radical freedom to consciously design the person you want to become. That negative self-talk, that bad habit you can't seem to shake, that skill you think you could never learn, it is not a fixed part of your identity. It's nothing more than a heavily trafficked neural pathway, a well-used road that your brain just takes out of habit. And the most important takeaway from all of this is this: you don't have to stay on that road. Every single day, you have the power to stop, turn around, and start clearing the brush to build a brand new one. You are the architect
of your mind.
And that change? It doesn't begin with some huge monumental effort. It begins with one different thought, one conscious action, one moment of focused effort. That is all it takes to start the entire process of rewiring.
So, we'll end with this question. Knowing that your future self is being built right now, one thought and one action at a time, what new trail are you going to forge today?